Hello everyone, welcome back. So in the last lesson, we have started working on the backend using the Spring Boot, and we developed a quick environment and a little application so that we can visit the page with the white label error. Now let's go ahead and add the security, functionality into our system. So this will be a lot of things putting together, and it's not very detailed, or I should say step-by-step breakdown. So you might encounter some of the things that you don't understand if you're not quite experienced with Spring Security and database stuff. But like I mentioned, you can refer to the other course that I have, or you can search whatever tutorials online to figure it out. This is just serve as a bigger scope, example for you to have a hands-on experience. Okay. And also, by the way, Boston right now is experiencing a blizzard, so it's supposed to get 12 inch of snow by the end of the day. So it's snowing very heavily outside, and wind is blowing very hard. And yeah, I'm recording my video sessions under this weather condition, which is actually very interesting. Okay, the first thing we need to do is to add some dependencies that we need. And we can open our pom.xml file and come to the code part. And here we're gonna have first two dependencies. One is the starter JDBC and one is the starter data JPA. So this will give us the ability provided by Spring framework to communicate with the database. Okay. And next, we need another dependency, which is Spring Boot Starter Security. Okay, so this will add the security functionality to our project. And after that, we need a dependency for our MySQL database connector, and that looks like this. All right, so I'm pasting those dependencies, and you can just refer to the source code, or you can pause the video and type in those code yourself. If it's the first time, I would suggest you type in yourself so that you can have some memory residing in your mind. So after you have saved those dependencies, we can start to work on some of the domain models, okay, or modules. So we're gonna right click on this bookstore folder and create a new folder. We're gonna call it domain. Okay. And we're gonna create a new folder called security. We'll create a class, Java class. And we're gonna call it authority. In this class, we'll be implementing the granted authority interface and serializable interface. So if you press Ctrl+Shift+O in Eclipse, it will automatically import those packages, all right, as long as we have the dependency added. And if you have a question on this grounded authority, you can just simply look it up. So this should be something you should do very often. If you have a question, pause and search it, try to understand it, okay? So this is how you learn stuff and get developed. So basically, what does this grounded authority do? It's just an interface, okay? And represent an authority granted to an authentication object. And granted authority must be either represent itself as a string or be specifically supported by an access decision manager. Okay. and then you can find more information. It's just, as you can see, as a permission or right. Okay, so this just for customize security that you can do in Spring Security Framework. Okay, and serializable is just as long as you implement this interface, this class can be serialized and pass around through the HTTP transactions. So first, what we need is we're gonna need a serial version UID. That's for serializable interface. Okay, so you can give a random number as you want, and we need a string of authority, and we have a constructor. Okay, and then we need to override a method which is get authority, return authority. So this is the method that needs to be overridden. Okay, so that's our authority class. Then we're gonna have another class, and it's called a row. So this one need first be registered as an entity. Okay, Ctrl+Shift+O, and we're gonna import the javax persistent.entity. This will be implemented serializable as well. So what this entity do is, this is basically from JPA, and what you need to do is when you have this add entity annotation, this class will be persist into database as a table. And JPA is just a Java persistence specification, which looks like something like an interface, doesn't have a concrete implementation. You have to find a concrete implementation to do that, and usually people will use Hibernate in this case. Okay, and then we're gonna have our ID. So whenever you have a class persisted as a table, it should have a primary key. And this annotation add ID will make this column or this field as the primary key. Okay. Private string name, and we need a private set user row field as well. This would be a hash set. And it's a good habit to have the default constructor defined. Then we can do the Ctrl+Shift+O to import all those packages. Okay. Also, we're gonna do a source, generate getters and setters, select all of them, click on OK. So Eclipse will help us to generate the getter method and setter methods. Okay. So this is so-called POJOs, or plain old Java object. If you're not familiar with this, basically you have all the fields set up as private. Okay. And then you have constructor, then you have the public getter and setters. So this is one of the principles of encapsulation. Again, you need to understand those basics so that makes sense of this POJO class. All right. And we haven't defined this user role yet, and we're gonna add it for now. New, other, class, and this would be user row. And actually there's one thing I haven't done yet. I need to define a serial version UID. It's not really required, but it's kind of like good to have it. Alright, and then I'll come back to our user role, and we can have add entity. And here comes another adaptation, says add table. Basically what it does is we can give our own name to the table name for this class, okay? So if you don't give this table name, the Java persistence will generate a default name for that. But if you want to use your own name, you can simply use this annotation, okay? And again, this will be implementing the serializable. And we'll have a file long serial version UID. And we need a ID generated value strategy equals to generation type as auto, and this would be user row ID. So as I have explained, add ID basically indicates the primary key, right? And this generate value strategy equals to generation auto basically means that when you persist an object in the database, you don't have to specify the ID value, and system will automatically generate a ID value for that, and it's gonna increment one by one automatically. Okay, so that's what this annotation does. We can define a constructor, default one, and then another one which takes user row. Sorry guys, there is like plowing truck to plow snows constantly driving around, that's why it's causing the noise. This dot user equals user, this dot row equals to row equals to row, and we're gonna define a user row and we need to specify the relationship between the two. So if you're familiar with tables, relational tables, so when you specify two related classes or tables, there will be different relationships like one to one, one to many, many to one, or many to many. Okay, so that is to say one class can refer to class object can refer to one element, one other class object, or one class object can refer to many other, or say multiple other classes instances. That's how you specify the relationship, okay? And this relationship is very important to figure out. Fetch type dot eager and join column name equals to user ID. So we haven't defined a user class yet. We'll be adding it very soon. But we are talking about user roles. This is a class, right? And then we're talking about the relationship between user role and the user. User is another class. Now, what's the relationship between those two classes? So just imagine one user can have multiple roles, right? He can be an admin and he can also be a normal user. So let's just say many to one is a valid relationship. And how about the other one? Can one user role refer to multiple users? Well, technically, yes. One user role can be referred to different users. That's because in practical, we are trying to address the relationship between roles and users. And the user role is kind of like an intermediate table. So let me show you a little bit of diagram. So if I explain this, suppose we have a user, right? User, and we have role. Okay, so each one has table and it has different columns, right? And you have records. We have user, same like this. Okay, so the relationship between this role and user, you can just think about it. One user can have multiple roles, okay? Now one role can be assigned to multiple users. So the relationship between the two is many to many. So I'll just mark it as n to n. Okay, so that's the relationship between the two. But actually, when you're trying to implement the relationship of these two classes, usually what people does is they're gonna have an intermediate table. We're gonna call it user role table. Okay, user, role table. And what this does is that you have the role table come to match with this user role, and you have the user table come to match with this user role table. And the relationship will be, one to many. And this one will be one to many. Okay? And in this way, this design will help us to mitigate some of the complexities when you are trying to design or develop the many-to-many relationships. Because a lot of times you'll see problems if you directly connect the two tables, without a intermediate table. So that's why we are using this user role as an intermediate table. As you can see, it has a connection to user and it has a connection to role as well. And the relationship would be many to one, and this one would be many to one as well. Okay. All right, I'll pause the video for now and we'll continue in the next lesson. See you guys in the next one.